Hello, everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of a Ztorm Robotics article. This audio podcast as part of a this audio podcast as part of a Raptor Ztorm. This audio podcast as part of a Platinum edition, and this audio podcast as part of a Ztorm Robotics production. So now looking at craniosynostosis and Crouzons Syndrome, and looking at particular sort of a particular sort of surgical procedure, if you like, that's referred to or has been referred to in the literature as a ventriculoperitoneal shunt, and shunting is a surgical sort of a surgical procedure that is sort of necessary to drain the excess fluid, or where hydrocephalus is identified in amongst Crouzons and craniosynostosis recipients, to sort of drain the excess fluid, and also to relieve the intracranial pressure in around the brain. And the procedure sort of starts in around where there is sort of a valve, a sort of a valve and a shunt that sort of begins from where there's entry into the cranium, and the valve or the shunt, if you like, is sort of situated in Crouzons, in where craniosynostosis and Crouzons has been in craniosynostosis and Crouzons recipients is concerned, as where there is the valve is put sort of behind the ear, or in around behind the sort of the ear around the ear space, and then the valve is sort of in a way anastomosed, or joined with sort of a tubing, if you like, that's situated under, that goes from behind the ear and toward the peritoneum, and sort of under, where the tubing is surgically placed underneath, underneath the skin, and where extra sort of tubing is used or has been used in and where around the peritoneal cavity for growth. And the procedure, in amongst evidence and the literature, procedure should be done as soon as hydrocephalus is recognized, to give the neonate or the child, the neonate or the pediatric or child, the best possible neurological outlook. And the procedure is, in the main, a ventriculoperitoneal shunt is in the main have been done in diagnosed Crouzons or craniosynostosis recipients, in the main, because of the neurological sort of deformation that can take place in amongst those diagnosed. And there is, again, listeners and viewers, there is literature and evidence in around the procedure of ventricular peritoneal shunt, has been referred into in literature as a ventriculoperitoneal shunt placement, and although again uh, the literature at the time of sort of going into this into and from this works was from around 2006. The ventriculoperitoneal shunt has sorry still has some bases, and although in amongst literature there may again be more sort of advanced and more advanced, and perhaps even less sort of primitive procedures sort of nowadays that are used sort of nowadays. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast is part of a Ztorm Robotics article. This audio podcast as part of a Raptor Ztorm, and this audio podcast as part of a Platinum Edition, and this audio podcast as part of a Ztorm Robotics production.